All right, my guest today is Leah Cushman, who you have met before. She's been on the show. We've talked about some New Hampshire family justice topics, and this sort of slides into that a little bit. But we're going to talk about HB2, which in the Granite State is New Hampshire's budget trailer bill. It's a dumpster fire. It's a garbage can. They throw everything they want in there at the end of the year, and it's nasty. But that's what we're going to talk about, because Leah had this fabulous post on X with, I don't know, close to 24 different things. You actually went through the whole bill and found all this garbage. That's crazy. So let's talk about that.
Sure. So I have an entire list. Everything is referenced. If you haven't seen it, it's on my X profile. It's at Leah Cushman NH. But essentially, first one is in sections 31 through 33. And this is probably up there in the most concerning pieces of it. Is it establishes a central planning agency. And if you read about the goals of this agency within that section of the Committee of Conference report, it goes on to tell you that it's going to encourage smart growth. And so that term caught my eye, and I was like, what is that? And
it's a little Marxist.
Oh, it is completely Marxist, straight from UN Agenda 2030 kind of talk.
Let me just interrupt you for a second. So people who aren't familiar, and a lot of our audience is New Hampshire, this is a New Hampshire majority state Senate and New Hampshire majority House. So it's a New Hampshire majority legislature. So basically you have this Committee of Conference, HB2 thing, and they both get together and they talk about all the crap they agree about and disagree about, and they end up pasting this garbage together. And Lee's going to explain to us why there's nothing Republican conservative about at least the 20,000 things you found in the bill.
Yeah, and I didn't even get into like the Group 2 stuff or even the spending, like the numbers, which is about a little less than 5% over the last budget by my research. But other people are way better at, digging into numbers than me. But as far as policy goes, if you go to page 13 through 15 of the budget. It's all right there. And essentially, it's the central planning agency that's going to plan out development of the state. And they're going to be the ones that control this new database that the budget also creates in a later section that's tied to an effort to grow and expand workforce housing within the state. And basically the plan is they're going to put in enabling legislation for now that says the selectmen may compile a list of all of the parcels of public land that are suitable for workforce housing development, subsidized housing, government housing, and that's just for now. Before they made it less egregious, as what this said. It had even more projects that they wanted to do before the sausage was made, and they watered it down a little bit. But it kind of lets you see what the end game is. So basically, they're gonna send the list of all the public parcels that are suitable for this to this central planning agency, and then they're gonna focus on climate change conscious development with smart growth, and so you can read it. It's pages 13 to 15. So that was the most egregious to me, and that piece is also sorry, I'm reading this right now, so I'm probably leaning in.
That's fine.
The Housing Champion program is continued. That's $5 million to incentivize zoning changes and subsidized housing. That's later in the bill, but it kind of works with this piece, so I wanted to mention it. And someone named NH New Hampshire State Budget Facts on Twitter came on my thread and just picked these low-hanging fruit things to reply to, and was like, well, this is just continuing spending that already exists. And I'm like, well, we shouldn't be continuing, government subsidized housing and trying to incentivize drastic zoning. So the other piece is the Partners in Housing program. That one is in sections 210 to 212, and page 63 and 64 of the Committee of Conference report on House Bill 2. and it's another incentive program for workforce housing, government subsidized housing on public land. That's the one that creates the language, or that enables the towns to start sending the data to the state to start building this database. And once that's in, they can just change the may to a shall. And, if, Democrats ever get control again, or this is happening under Republicans. So that's the scariest thing that I've seen in the budget. I mean, that is like broad central planning for the future development of our state instead of organic, market-based, market-driven, development and settlement of the state. And I think that's totally antithetical to the Republican platform and, to the Constitution, Part 2, Article 84, where it talks about keeping markets free and competition. So
was there a bill for this that ended up getting crammed into the budget, or did they just stick this in the trailer bill?
I didn't see any bills on a central planning agency. I think that would have, there would have been alarms,
I would think,
months ago about that.
Lots of resistance. That's probably why nobody brought it up.
Right. So yeah, it's buried in the budget, and it's broken up into like 3 parts. But you can see how they work together. And then there's also some language that I don't have on this list that is just like basically directing the executive council and the fiscal committee on being able to accept grants, many of which I'm sure are for this. So the other nice little project that is expanding, that is drastically expanded by this, that we should have opposed, last term more strongly than we did, but it's child care subsidies, taxpayer funded babysitting. And for some reason, Republicans in the House putting this budget together, or influencing the ones who are putting it together behind the scenes, are, just trying to bulk up all of these subsidies, including like grants for bonus pay, benefit packages, for retention. They're expanding it in at least 2 or 3 ways. One is in section 71, page 25. They're gonna, so that right now they have child care scholarships, and page 25 in section 71 guarantees that if they get a wait list for the child care scholarships, that with a simple maneuver, they can get general funds to prevent that wait list. So basically enabling unlimited funding for child care scholarships. And then this is also kind of broken up into different sections, like in different areas of the bill, like not near each other. So the next part on child care that ties into this one is rating the It's the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, TANF, reserve funds to avoid a wait list for government babysitting. So there's that. We're going to raid the welfare for that. And then, so just moving money around. If you want to prioritize one thing, cut from somewhere else, right? Wouldn't that be the fiscally responsible way to do it?
Yeah, it would. And I'm looking at this list and I'm seeing all kinds of things. Obviously, the babysitting thing, GPS monitoring, fake IDs. You mentioned the New Hampshire retirement system. That's the Group 2 thing I've written about, and I got attacked. It's expected, of course, because you're like, it's money. A new youth detention center, which for people who are not from New Hampshire is where people in the state sexually abuse children. That's me saying that. Workforce housing, of course, you mentioned. Lots of mandates on businesses. Changes in Medicaid funding that are not favorable to taxpayers. Digital state IDs. And institutionalizing children. I wrote a note. What was that? Where did I find that?
Yep. So in section, before I go into that one, just want to say one more thing about the child care subsidies.
Yep.
They're making it so that it's a prospective payment system, so they'll get paid ahead of time before they provide the service. And then they're also presuming eligibility for anyone who applies. And then during the eligibility period, any payments that the state made for someone's child care, even if they're later found to be that they were ineligible, they don't have to pay that back. So that is totally responsible. But the unlimited funding for institutionalizing children with fiscal committee approval, that is section 435. It's page 151. I will pull it up, but bear with me because it'll take a minute. But
Sure.
yeah, the state ID part, um, I don't understand why the director of the Department of Safety, which is the state police, should have the authority to to authorize manufacture, sale, and presentation of fake IDs without any guardrails on it at all. I mean, I understand maybe some undercover operations might require something like that, but there needs to be guardrails. What's the, what's the reason that they need it? Has to fit some criteria there, and to just give them carte blanche ability to do that doesn't make sense. Sorry, it is
Oh, it's fine.
170 something pages. All right, so under section 435, the Department of Health and Human Services for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2027, if the Commissioner of the Department of Health and Human Services determines that there are insufficient funds in one account, which is Child and Family Services, and the other account, System of Care, to fund residential placements for youth, he or she may request, with prior authorization of the Fiscal Committee of the General Court, that the Governor and Council authorize additional funding. The Governor is authorized to draw a warrant from any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated. So most people probably don't know that we failed our federal Title IV audits. There's several different programs under Title IV of the Social Security Act that are intended to fund training for foster care placements for foster families, as well as ensuring services to prevent removal of children from the home before needing to place them in foster care, and then to pay to support those foster homes and those kids in foster placement. And that we failed those audits multiple times. And in this budget, actually in another section, there are directions for the Department of Health and Human Services to use those funds to maximize training for personnel, technology, accounting, and enrolling the children that are under the guardianship of the state in federal benefits. So to me, that reads like we're gonna use these kids to get as much federal funding into the state as we can, and then we're not going to use the funds that are supposed to be used for them. In this case, the section I'm talking about is Title 4E. We're going to use it to keep our system going and be able to, intervene. And if you look at the audit, we have to pay that money back if we don't use it appropriately. We're on the hook for paying back the federal government, and we've had to do that. No one ever talks about that in these budget discussions. And there was actually a move on the floor when HB2 came to the floor to take that out and make the language so that it prioritizes what the federal program is supposed to prioritize, which is taking care of the children that are in state care. So this section 435 is basically saying, well, if you run out of funds to place kids, which we do in this state, we institutionalize children. We put them in congregate living at 3 times the national average rate, that they can just pilfer the general fund and draw a warrant from any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated. It's just totally irresponsible stewardship of taxpayer dollars.
Oh, it absolutely is. And anybody who doesn't know, New Hampshire seems to have this habit of literally trying to get children into the YDC system, into, foster care or some others. It's like a revenue generating machine for them. They use kids to make money.
Yep.
Thank you. My mailman
like,
just arrived. Go ahead.
As I was reading it, I felt like I could see the shadow of how that works. Reading through the budget, just like we're moving this money here, we're going to create this fund here, this revolving fund there. You can draw more if you need it from this fund. But it's what you don't see here is there are millions and millions and millions of federal dollars coming into the state, and there's grifters and fraud and waste and abuse in every level of government who have their eyes on that money, and they're it's not getting down to the people who need it eventually, because people are skimming off the top.
Yeah, and the worst part about it is when these children or families are ill-served, the other side of that coin is the NGOs and the lawyers and the people they're connected to and the lobbying firms that make money suing the state because of how badly it mishandles children and families. Which is like
Yep.
your whole thing, right? New Hampshire Family Justice is trying to deal with the awful family courts. And, we already had enough crap going on, and now we have all of this stuff.
Yeah, there's many mechanisms for which the state can use to commoditize children. They can put a dollar sign on a kid's head and use some actions in a court that does not provide due process or really any rules, and they can make any outcome they want, and that outcome, depending on what it is, will generate federal funds from this program or that program. It's disgusting. So there's a lot in here. You'd mentioned going back so I can remember.
There's just so much.
Yeah.
We could talk for hours about how bad this budget is.
I know. Without even talking about money.
I know.
Digital state IDs. Why are we doing that? Also, there's a clause in here to share information on licenses with the federal government.
What's the deal with, where did it go? Now I'm misplacing things, and I just have a little yellow Post-it note. Okay.
The digital IDs thing scares me with all this talk about Palantir.
That's what it was.
And yeah, it's the first step in a social credit system. And this is why New Hampshire made Real ID, voluntary, because we saw it as the first, step into something nefarious and that we didn't want. And vaccine passport, same thing. We didn't want any of that. So now they're already, and there's been no real public awareness about this being in the budget. I have not heard anybody besides me talking about it. And it seems like a pretty big deal. So why weren't Republicans out front letting people know?
Yeah, and it's their budget. Why is it in there?
Right.
Why is workforce housing in there? Why are they putting mandates that are basically family leave-like in the budget? They're fiddling with Medicaid funding. There's just so much garbage in here, and I wouldn't have known about it either. And literally, nobody's going to read the budget. You read the budget. The only people, I don't even think the people who voted on the budget read the damn thing, because there's clearly so much garbage in here that a lot of those people, once they've been made aware, might say, well, oh crap. Now, they're voting on this Thursday. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep, Thursday.
Okay, so we have a couple days to get the entire actual Republican members of the House to go, no, we don't like this. And I know that Governor Ada said that she wanted to veto it for other reasons. I don't know if she's changed her mind or not, but I don't even know if a veto would make a difference. There's just so many things here that are wrong.
Honestly, if the House and the Senate aren't going to kill it, I'll be happy that she vetoes it. But the problem is that the House should get out ahead of it and kill it for the main reason that it is not a conservative budget. She's out there saying it's too conservative, essentially. Doesn't spend enough money, doesn't bloat government enough, and it doesn't give fat benefit packages to state employees or government employees. Those aren't even Republican values. Of course, like first responders, taking care of them, they need to be, but we're talking about retirement benefits that give them huge salaries every year after 20 years of work. And meanwhile, everyday people are having a really hard time just getting by. It just seems we're creating two tiers, two classes of people. I always say this, like in 1984, is the party and the proles. That's what is happening, bulking up this government employee, government tractor class, and everyone else who's working in the private sector is left with crumbs and is offsetting the lifestyles of the other class.
Yeah, I wrote about that, and that's what got me in trouble, which is fine because we love that. We invite it and we embrace it and we fight back. The group 2 is bad enough as it is in the budget, and she wants group 2, that this is the pension plan for state employees. She wants it to be fatter than it is already. So
Right.
I don't know who's going to pay for that. I don't know. Maybe they can take some money from the fund they get for all the kids they're abusing. Or I don't know how it's going to work. It's crazy. New Hampshire is a great state. There are a lot of freedoms and rights and things that we've managed to get done correctly, but the undercurrent that most of the nation's unaware of is that there's this corrupt cabal that operates underneath the entire state, and they try to control everything that happens in government that's important to them. And it's really, really ugly. So we're up here saying, live free or die, except for this crap down here. So it's just,
Right.
And this budget is, I'm just, I'm not totally excited with Republican leadership. I've had my issues with them. There's a couple people I really like, and a couple people who I think are, just working the system to get rich, because that's what happens here. But there's things in this, they just make no sense. So I want to thank you, first of all, for going to the trouble of making this huge list, which isn't even everything, as you pointed out, so that we can get it in front of, all the people that we reach out to who can call state reps and email state reps. And please, when you do that, be polite. Nobody wants to be treated rudely, even if they deserve it. They're more likely to listen to you if you are short, brief, and to the point. You could say something like, please vote against this budget, and give a couple reasons why. And we've got a list right here, thanks to Leah. And you can pick up right from where, I will include this link in the podcast, under the podcast. I won't put it in the podcast. And we'll give everybody an opportunity to see some of your great work.
Thanks. Can I make 2 more points?
Please do.
It seems like they already kind of expect that this budget is, like, they were talking about finding new revenue just like last week. Oh, we're expecting a lot more revenue than we thought. And I think a lot of this is a dream. A lot of it is based on lottery that doesn't exist yet. It just seems like kind of fan's not really based in reality. There is already something in here that if they go into default, they can raid the rainy day fund. So almost like a just in case. And then there's also, speaking of the retirement, Section 130, page 42, allows state agencies to use funds in appropriate budget class to pay penalties, fines, interest, or other costs imposed on the state by the New Hampshire retirement system or the IRS. So
great.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
Are we expecting penalties?
With Republicans like this, who needs Democrats? I don't know how long you've been in New Hampshire, maybe your whole life, in which case you would know this. But Off and on. Back before the O'Brien legislature, when they took over after the Tea Party wave in 2010, Democrats and budget writers, to discover revenue that didn't exist, took a section of highway and sold it from one state department to another and counted that as revenue.
Wow.
That's one example of the many stupid things that have happened in the state.
Crazy.
So anyway, that's where we are. Apparently, Republicans have adopted this kind of thinking, and thanks to Leah Cushman, you now know. So thank you very much for taking time to talk to me, and hopefully I can paste together that little blip in the middle where I lost you for 2 minutes. So thanks.
All right, thank you.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
GrokTALK.